All right. And we are rounding third base and headed home. We covered, Jesus, a lot today. Talked about Kirk Cousins getting his money from the Atlanta Falcons, $50 million guaranteed. He signed a 4-year deal worth almost $180 million. And we also talked about Russell Wilson signing his 1-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the good folks in the Steel City. Congratulations to them. We talked about Miss Kayla Ard getting let go by the Utah State Aggies, the women's basketball program. Hopefully, she'll land on her feet somewhere else. But we also have another firing. We have another firing on site. And so we got another firing on site right now. I don't like to go ahead and talk about these, but they pop up. And I ask the questions, why are they fired? And then I let the fan bases say whatever they're going to say. So Louisville is firing Kenny Payne. The Cardinals coach will be dismissed after 2 infamous seasons where they underperformed. Now, this is out of Yahoo Sports and Matt Norlander. Louisville plans to fire Kenny Payne on Wednesday, as sources confirmed to CBS Sports, barring any unforeseen delays. The process will be official after Payne and the team return to Louisville. This outcome has been expected for months to come, and the Cardinals season ended Tuesday in the first round of the ACC tournament against NC State with a 94 to 85 defeat. Louisville finished 8-24 this season, doubling its number of victories after going 4-28 in the first season. So that is an accurate statement, but it's also a half truth. The last couple of games that Louisville had to play, they had 7 players who were injured. So they didn't even have a full roster to compete in the ACC tournament, and it was going to be an arduous task, to say the least, because Louisville, if they would have beat NC State, they would have had to play Syracuse, which that game came down pretty close to the wire, and they almost beat Syracuse at the first meeting in Syracuse, up in Rochester somewhere. And then they would have had to play Duke. So it wasn't going to end well for Louisville, but I thought that the guys played hard and they played well. And when I look at teams where the quote-unquote embattled head coach and they start putting these stigmas on him, I just have to say, wait a minute, are there other circumstances that you're not talking about to give a persuasive argument to what you have to say? Now, Kenny Payne's a grown man. Kenny Payne can defend Kenny Payne. You know, I'm not a defender of Kenny Payne, but I'm also not a doubter of Kenny Payne. I'm just a person who's looking at things reasonably. And again, like I said, the NCAA also had Louisville under investigation when this man took over. So when he took over, they didn't even know if they were going to have a season. They had guys quit and leave the program. But also, Kenny Payne can't sit here and give himself this, woe is me attitude, because even to settle the locker room, you could have just came in and told him, hey, look, I'm trying to go ahead and I've got a 6-year deal. So when I get here, you may not be part of the 6-year plan at U of L. However, I am willing to work with you and turn this thing around for the better. He could have kept a lot of people on board with that. And that's me. That's my personal feeling. You can't sit up here and walk in and tell guys that they may not have a spot on this team, because those guys are going to leave. Payne was hired in 2022, replacing Chris Mack, who cut ties with the university midway through his 4th season. At the time of his hiring, Payne was Payne was lauded to figure, like I said, he was. Here's why people was campaigning for Kenny Payne. Number one, he played for Denny Crum, and he was from the Louisville Cardinals championship team in 85-86 when they won the NCAA championship. So a lot of the fan base was happy about that. Now, why they felt the need to say that this was Louisville's first black head coach, to me, I felt like that was unnecessary. That was unnecessary. That wasn't a sticking point for anybody, not in the community, not people who were watching basketball. When you start to bring up race in a situation where race isn't warranted, then, like I say, people start to lose detractors. Because the guy who they had as the interim head coach when Chris Mack was let go, he did a good job. With those same players that Chris Mack couldn't get the best out of, that guy had Louisville clicking and rolling. Now, I don't know why they didn't offer that guy the job, but like I said, at that time, everybody was hot and heavy and wet and moist for Kenny Payne. And make no mistake, Payne wasn't sitting at home twiddling his fingers. He was the assistant coach for the New York Knicks. He was looking at basketball on a high level. So he did not need the headaches of Louisville athletics. Again, he was hired away from his assistant post as the New York Knicks assistant coach. Again, when you don't know somebody's pedigree and you cast these aspersions that this guy was useless or whatever, these people don't know anything about basketball. And again, I don't have to invent things to enforce my opinion. When you do that, you taint a conversation. So when do you really get an honest conversation about what's going on and the outlook of the program? Again, like I said, we can have these conversations all day long. Payne was a longtime influential assistant at John Calipari's Kentucky, helping the Wildcats to the 2012 national title. And after that, he did some time at Oregon and Oregon basketball. And the man has been around basketball his entire adult life. When I hear people say something ridiculous like he can't coach, I'm just like, well, wait a minute. What are you talking about? From people who never coached. These people ain't never coached. They've never had to make out a substitution chart. They've never had to go ahead and worry about how to beat the press, how to keep the ball in the middle of the court as opposed to on the edges, how to beat the defense, late game situations. These people don't coach basketball. They're extreme fans, and half of them are assholes. And that's the truth. That's the truth. Half of these fans are assholes. So, again, the belief was Payne could bring recruiting coups and major victories to Louisville the way he helped sustain Kentucky's operation for so many years. But that was not the case at all. Well, why wasn't it the case? And see, this is another bad faith statement, because when he got to Kentucky, Kentucky was already established. They were not a gutter team. Kentucky was not under investigation. Kentucky had been rolling. They got rid of the one guy who came and he stunk the place up. They bought in Calipari from Memphis. Calipari had 2 to 3 years. He had the Wildcats looking good. Then Kenny Payne showed up, and then they had sustained growth. The way that you looking at this thing is, if you look at it like, oh, he could do it at Kentucky, why couldn't he do it here? Dummy, things take time. And they wasn't in the same position. Now, despite how bad things are now, the history and upside of Louisville basketball is so great, and it will command an attractive pool of candidates, including sitting head coaches at other high major programs. No, it won't. No, it won't. The Louisville job is not what people think it is. And I'm sick of the fan base in Louisville, me being an Indiana fan, but I live in Southern Indiana. So we're close to Louisville. So some people follow the Cards. They follow them and things like that. But Louisville fans are assholes. You're not guaranteed to win everything. You're not gonna win all the time. And these people think that they are entitled to a victory. They think that they're entitled to a victory. You had a coach for life in Denny Crum. He had put the program on national levels in 80 and 85. Then you had Rick Pitino, and Rick Pitino actually won a title. And then they wrote some book about recruits having sex and money, which nobody was convicted but the lady who wrote the book. Explain that to me. The author who wrote the book, Dishing the Dirt, is the only person who went to jail. McGee got another job. Pitino is coaching also at St. Joe's. And if they took Petrino back after he invented a job and had a side piece at Arkansas, and Louisville took him back, they're not above taking back Rick Pitino. They're not above taking Pitino back. They're not above that. With a new arena, free, him in the clear. Again, Louisville is not the job that people think it is. Because they will look at that. And Rick Pitino, again, he was exonerated by the NCAA. So Louisville put themselves on punishment and took their own banner down. Stupid. The school has the NIL support and a financial package that will compete with any job on market in the cycle, according to the sources. Nobody wants that money. I think the old folks have a saying that the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and Louisville's juice is not worth the squeeze. You can keep the juice. You can keep the squeeze. You can keep all of these headaches. Now, the potential targets include Baylor's Scott Drew, FAU's Dusty May, USF's Amir Abdur-Rahim, and Indiana State's Josh Schertz. None of those names are going to come here. None of those names are going to come to Louisville and try to coach. The fan base is too wild. You have a pro outlook on a college team because the way that the Louisville Cardinals program is scrutinized, they're scrutinized like they're a pro team. And so you got to have a coach and a coaching staff who's strong enough to fight the press. You have to beat up the Courier Journal. You kind of silence everything around. You got to put a leash on WDRB, Fox 41, Chris Bosich, and those guys. You got to choke them out and make sure you get nothing but fluff pieces. And none of these guys are strong enough to do that. And again, let's just look at the example. They dropped Scott Drew's name at Baylor. And this is why reporting matters. Do your research. He's been at Baylor since 2003. He didn't have a breakout year until 2008. Now, if you put him on the same metrics as you had Kenny Payne, they would have fired him too. That's why he's not wanting to come here. Because it wouldn't be much better. Again, like I said, they would have got rid of him. And to further substantiate that, in 2024, because that would, like I said, he's been there since 2003. The following year, 2004, they were 9-19. Again, they're somewhere around U of L's right now. So if that's not enough to get him fired in Texas, and they got Kenny Payne fired in Louisville, what are we jumping the gun about? All of these coaches that they name dropped got 5 years to build out of a bad situation. Louisville seems to think that, oh, it's just a coaching thing. You don't have players. You don't have players at all. Dusty May, he's been at FAU since 2018. His first season, 12-19. That was 11th in the conference. And that's Conference USA. They're not playing the Dukes. They're not playing Syracuse. Not playing North Carolinas or Virginias and Pittsburghs of the world. They're playing Conference USA, Western Kentucky, Charlotte, the Tulane Green Wave. And that's the name that you float. because those are prestigious names. Again, I am not defending Kenny Payne, and I'm not doubting Kenny Payne. But when we write stupid stuff and we don't give people a accurate picture of what is going on at U of L, we do ourselves a disservice. And if you look at it, their marquee win where they just lost a game at the buzzer was Texas earlier this year because they had Texas dead to rights. But again, you got to have players to win the game. None of these guys that was playing for Kenny Payne this year can go anywhere and start. Tell me I'm lying. Again, you got to have players. And I understand people want Kenny Payne gone. I could care less. I'm an Indiana fan. I'm worried about Indiana. But at the end of the day, I'm just an honest individual. And I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to say, yeah, but, and then leave it for you to explain. Yeah, but, and then you leave it for you to kind of follow up, counterpoint. And then this one, there's all kind of pushback. Because I'm sitting here saying to myself, as a person who knows how basketball works, hey, look, I can't go into anything with one hand tied behind my back. Got to have players, got to have a system, got to have culture, got to have discipline, got to have high character guys. I don't know why Milt Wagner was still on the staff. The only reason Milt was on the staff was to get his son to come to Louisville. When his grandson opted out and went to Kentucky, he should have been fired. You had one job. And not saying that DJ Wagner was going to go ahead and turn Louisville around by itself. But again, if I'm this kid's grandfather and you don't listen to me, what good was I? And what does he do? Again, it's expected. Kenny Payne is going to be let go. Cardinal fans, how do you feel about the situation? You was floating fantasy names like Jay Wright. Jay Wright has no fire to come to Louisville at all for no reason whatsoever. He doesn't want any part of this mess. But you all still seem to think that you're the pretty girl from high school, when in fact, you're not. You're not. One more story to go ahead and get to before we get to the end of the segment. Nick Saban turned hater. He's on the Congress steps crying to anybody who'll listen. This is